I am having a just an amazing talk. We've had a couple of talks actually. Glenn Zottola and I over the past few days. It's going to be a great interview. I know you're going to love it. Glenn is really truly a world famous jazz trumpeter and saxophone player. Get that, both with equal expertise. It's stunning, and many, many, many more gifts we're going to talk about. He lives here in our neighborhood, in the Society 805 neighborhood, and as he has said himself, he's a master and loves the American songbook, and it's in his DNA. I've heard you say this on several interviews. Glenn,
Okay.
let me have a few more minutes to finish this up. It's just a privilege for me. I'm the classicist, as most everybody knows that watches my interviews. And I've had this privilege of really bathing in the most gorgeous, beautiful, exquisitely executed, and I know you can understand what I'm saying here, superb music making. This is Glenn Zottola. His story is so huge, I don't even know where to begin, but let me just throw a little bit at you, and then I'm going to throw it back at Glenn and let him give us some overview. I mean, this guy, we're talking a man who has worked with Lionel Hampton, Frank Sinatra. You've heard this before, right? Peggy Lee, Benny Goodman, Charlie Parker, Chick Corea, on and on and on and on. And he'll give us more, I'm sure. But more importantly, from my point of view, as a may I say, professional musician as well, Glenn, this man, and I've heard you'll talk about how you chose by ear, is what I'm getting at, to pursue, as opposed to possibly by more structured training. And you do read music, but you know what I'm trying to get at. That's going to be quite a story, that story coming up. But you are a natural musician in the most exquisite, superb way. That's what I came away with from spending several hours with you. Go ahead and accept my accolades, and then we'll move on.
Well, Daniel, the first thing I want to say, I've been interviewed all over the world. I am literally honored to be, you know, jamming with you and talking with you because I read your resume and I was blown away and so impressed. Rarely do I have an interviewer with the credentials that you have, and it's a thrill. It's a thrill to have camaraderie, with another artist.
Thank you very much. And we did not make any kind of exchange of money agreement before this
Yeah.
interview. Here's the thing. I want to make sure we're on. Yep, we are. But I really mean that. And for me, it has been. You and I have spoken about it. As you said, music is good or bad. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I am talking to and I will take it just a step further, uh, and I mean it from my hours with you, if you will, getting ready for this interview. There is genius, and you are one, absolutely beyond question. I am certain of it. So I will salute you as a genius, and
Well,
you'll tell us why in a few minutes. Now let me get through this. Um,
well, I have to say that I've been blessed. Okay, I've been blessed
yeah,
with a musical environment, which which goes a long way when you're
oh,
growing up.
let's start right there. Port Chester, New York.
Yeah.
Born of a musical family. Take it from there. Your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters. I mean, brothers, sister. I can't remember, but all musicians.
And daily jam sessions. And my dad was a conductor like you. He was a great trumpet player, and he exposed me. He was very much into opera and Puccini and Verdi, and he exposed me. Even though I'm not a classical musician like you, I've done a little bit of it. He exposed me to great music, and he loved jazz too. He was a big fan of Harry James and Louis Armstrong. He was friends with Louis Armstrong. Louis was my first mentor when I was a kid. So, that kind of environment, I've been blessed. What could I say? Of course, I had some talent, but to be in that environment and be nurtured. Then he opened up a jazz club. You know, I've been blessed.
The signature mouthpieces, if I recall. I mean, you are an entrepreneur as well. We'll get there, I hope, in this interview.
He
But
made,
it's just amazing.
these
There you go.
mouthpieces. You know,
That's
uh,
sweet.
tremendous love for music. Tremendous love for music. And something I wanted to say. He was a great trumpet player. And in those days, and you might understand this, they had what they call Italian concert bands. Okay, and they played all the opera. but there were no singers, okay? So it was the horn player, like in his case, the trumpet player who had to play the arias that would be sung by a great opera singer. So he instilled in me what I call singing through the horn. The idea of lyricism, the idea of expressing like a great vocalist through the horn. And that's been my, from the beginning, that's been my approach to playing the instruments is lyrical vocalizing through the horn.
By the way, you are way ahead of me. I was going to get there, but you ran me right into that one. I'm going to talk about this idea. I remember reading some in some of the material that you really sort of discovered that it helped the sort of standard way of learning things you were having trouble with. And your parents, your supportive parents, said go with whatever you go with, and you went with improvisation, with free
I was
learning by ear, all of that with your perfect pitch and so on that you described earlier when you're
ear
not.
play by ear, really good piano. My dad was well schooled. His teacher was from the Scala Milan, which where you got to before you even touch an instrument, it's a year worth of theory with that system, you know. But he used to tell me about getting on stage with the trumpet and having to do the aria in Madame Butterfly or Tosca and have to express like a great, like, you know, a great opera singer through the trumpet. And that's what he instilled in me. And he allowed me to take my own route, you know, which was a different than these well-schooled musicians,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
He didn't
Many,
fight.
many parents would have screamed bloody murder and insisted.
I came home to him and he started me out on solfeggio, you know solfeggio,
Sure.
right? And
I hate it, but go ahead.
I mean, but it helped me because I learned how. Solfeggio, for people that don't know, is the division of music. You know, and it's an old method, and it teaches you how to divide music up so you can read music.
By the way,
But
that's the first time I've ever heard it expressed that way, and that's exactly right. Solfeggio.
Pasqualona was the book I.
You know.
You had to clap. You had to go one, do, re, mi, fa, sol. You know what I mean? You had to
I
fight
do.
out legitimately, but then I got so I couldn't do it.
That's what I meant. What you in your things I've read, the idea that you just said, I'm my creative person, if I may project a little bit as an outsider, my creative person just can't do with this. I mean, I've gotta be free, if you will. That's what blows my brains out. And your parents said, fine, do that. And there you are. As you know, the celebrated improvisatory artist for the Betty Goodman Band, for the all of it that you'll talk about. I mean, to me, that's the most impressive thing about you is the support of your parents and the freedoms that you instinctively pursued.
Right. Well,
Take a minute.
um, I since I was 3 years old, I always heard lots of music in my head, even though I couldn't play it. You know, like a kid does a drawing, and to him, he's enjoying the landscape, but you look at it, you can't even see what it is. So when I was 3 years old, I started playing trumpet, and it didn't sound that good, but I heard all this music in my head, and I wanted to get it out right away.
Wonderful. Okay, let's jump ahead. Let me look for another question here. My mind is still whirling. Let's talk about improvisation for a minute
Okay.
because and I've seen a little bit of your training videos. I mean, when does it stop? You've done zillions of CDs. We're going to talk about help the music without you know what I mean, music for one. You know what I mean. That
Yeah.
series that you did. So we'll get there. But this business of improvisation, obviously, you're a natural, and I've heard you say less is better. Imitate before you try to
Right.
improvise things like that. I'm paraphrasing you.
Right.
What is it? Because I hear in this day that I've had with you in terms of your music, listening and listening and listening, it's so free and natural. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. What
Right.
and you've explained in a little bit how that you are expressing yourself poetically, if you will, through the instrument. All those cliches, but what is that? How is it? Where does it come from?
I view it as conversation. And, you know, if you just take it back to how a kid learns language, he learns by listening to his parents. And, you know, he doesn't learn grammar. He can talk before he knows grammar, right? So it's language and it's repetition and it's copying. And, you know, obviously listening to good music helps, no? Listening
Yeah.
to good.
Thank you, Dad. Hello. In your case. Your
You know,
father?
my dad used to put me to sleep when I was a kid, and he put on Respighi, he put on Pines of Rome, he put in Afternoon of a Faun, he put on Puccini, and that's the way I would go to sleep when I was a kid, and I'd be absorbing all that music, you know.
Now, you know, I'm skipping all over the place because have no idea where to begin with you, really. So we're bunching around. I'm looking at my notes. I love something I heard you say in one of the things I looked at. It's about how you judge music making, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong
Okay.
or misquote you. But you said, I'm critical on artistic content.
Wow. I see you really studied.
Well, to me, that just jumped right out at me and that's already a mystery within an enigma. I'm critical on artistic contact, but you and I know that is what it is, whatever that is. Please help me.
I remember, I'm watching the Grammys because I'm a member of the Grammy committee, and a lot of the music is not that good. Okay, and I'm watching it, and I said to my wife, I said, "Wow, that's great." She said, "I cannot believe you like that," because the style of the music wasn't jazz, right? I said, "No, that's some honest music, you know." So it doesn't matter the style of the art form as long as the music is honest.
Oh, oh, you hit it right on the head because I'm the one that's been the artsy fartsy classical conductor, very snooty, outraged that Leonard Bernstein said so many wonderful things about the Beatles. That's who I was once upon a time.
Exactly.
And now I'm getting old. It's all starting to make sense to me finally. That's another thing about our age group. To me, I'm finally beginning to understand what this thing is that's captivated me all my life, this music. But I've forgotten the train of thought, senior moment.
Reverse that now. Give me an idea of what music really inspired. I'm just curious. What kind of classical music totally inspires you or did inspire you from the beginning?
Well, I think I can answer you in a way that you and I both can agree on.
Okay.
When something has substance, when you hear substance, when you hear a narrative,
Okay.
when you hear and can feel even if you don't understand thoroughly, just like I don't understand grammar and I'm a writer,
Right.
but can understand structure, you know that there's structure, that there's sensibility. And I'm thinking of
Right.
something Brahms said. You know, we've talked. I'll speak to you as the classicist. You'll understand me perfectly, Betty. But to my surprise, Brahms even said, you know, without words to the effect of, you know, without structure, without some understanding, without some kind of craft, that music can be just weeds blowing in the wind. Very beautiful, but not structured, if you will. I'm not a structured person particularly, but did I make any sense?
Yes. So, for example, let me ask you a question, and it's good. I'm asking you questions because it'll put a form into for the listener.
It's outrageous, but go ahead.
Well, like for example, would you find a similarity in terms of the structure or in terms of the truth in music between, let's say, Bach and Stravinsky, which is so wide stylistically? Those art forms are so far apart. Bach and Mozart, let's say, and Stravinsky and Bartok, but you would find a certain honesty or similarity in both those.
I think you and I can both agree on this, and then I need to get back to interviewing you. But the point is, again, art is art. If it speaks, if it
Right,
makes sense, if there's substance and intellect and
right,
subtext
right,
in anything, and I'm going to bring this, then it makes sense. So Stravinsky, the Rite of Spring, of course, to me it's like classical music now, but at that time very controversial compared to a Mozart symphony and so on. If there is depth and substance and subtext even, and structure and organization, I'm interested, and I'm going to take it right back at you. This is what I heard. Well, let me just finish, Glenn.
I very funny, a very
Okay, okay, go ahead.
story that I think you'll love.
All right.
My dad, when he was studying to be an arranger, was studying with a very
You
prominent
should move maybe a little bit more to your left. I want to make sure you're still in camera. Okay, go
artist
ahead. Go ahead. That's better. Thank you. I just want to make sure because I've been there before. Go ahead. Sorry. Your
with
dad.
a very prominent professor at Columbia University, private. He didn't have the money to go to Columbia. Anyway, when they smuggled from Russia in the score of Petrushka, he got the assignment to take the score and copy all the parts out. And he
Amazing.
had to go through it 3 times before he got the pass from his professor. And those days they called it being an autographer, meaning that your notation was so good and all your bar lines were so straight because they now took that music and they printed the plates, made the plates to print the music from that.
Amazing.
So he was the one that, when they smuggled the score in, that actually when you see the printed music, it says handwriting.
Amazing. Incredible. Yeah. And we're talking about things no more. Gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And is it good or is it bad? No, it's just what's that expression about when things change dramatically in the history of the planet, like the Industrial Revolution ending and
Right.
so on. A paradigm. It's a big, just we're in a big and interesting paradigm. Okay.
Your audience, what kind of audience do you have?
These are mostly college music faculty
Okay.
here in this will go out on Bravo, California, go out on Society 805, who's hiring me to
Okay.
do this interview. And that's a very specific audience, as I understand, in the southern part of Santa Barbara County, Ventura County. Bravo, California, I'll also put this interview up there, and that's a larger audience throughout all of Southern California and the West even, and so on. So it's about
Mostly
15,000.
classical oriented, though?
So, pardon?
Mostly classical audio oriented?
Yeah, pretty much classical music. Well, music faculty at colleges, whatever. I don't know. I've got theater people, I have dance people, I have patrons of the arts. I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in this interview, for sure.
I just sent Chick Corea an email because I
Drop a
heard
name. Drop a name.
a duet he did with this girl who I never heard of. Do you know someone named Hiromi Yuhura?
No,
Pianist,
no,
Japanese?
no.
Oh my God. I just, he was a prodigy, started from classical music.
Yeah.
You can see her videos at 15,
Wow.
and now she's crossed over. She plays incredible jazz. This lady,
Ooh,
oh my God.
incredible. I've
Yeah.
got to get back to the interview.
Okay, sorry. So
I'll
much.
let Tatiana chop it up and do this. And let's see here. You know, we've hinted at it. This business of, and I've heard it with my own ears today. You're really, it's truly uncanny, as you have mentioned. Maybe two or three, and then whatever the last 100 years or so. You know what I'm getting at. Musicians that can play brilliantly, and I mean brilliantly, trumpet and saxophone. It's because they're two different worlds, really, in terms of the embouchure and so on. It just very seldom happens. Where did that? Who threw a saxophone in your face when you were so good at trumpet? What happened?
Well, I always tell people no one told me I shouldn't do that. That helps.
Yes.
But no, when I was listening to a lot of trumpet players when I was a kid on record, there were some fantastic saxophone players in those groups. And I always loved the saxophone, even though I was a trumpet player. So I always had a tremendous affinity for saxophone. And I was endorsing trumpets for a company when I was 13. And I sent a letter to the president of the company. I said, I'd like to try the saxophone. Can you send me one? And he sent me one. And I learned, took one lesson from a friend that told me where to put my fingers, and that was it. And I just transferred everything from the trumpet over to the saxophone. I never took any lessons on saxophone, all self-taught.
Okay, and once again, you bring up this whole thing. That's why I earlier, not just to kiss, not just to be kissy kissy, but I described you as a genius. This to me is absolutely stunning evidence. Picking it up, learning it, and then we're not talking playing well for the greater Ventura area. We're talking about world class playing of both instruments. This to me is genius, that kind of capability. So I want to throw that at you for the second or third time.
What I did was because I heard all this music in my head, I let my ears, which is a weird thing,
It's a phenomenal.
teach my body what to do.
I've never heard such a description, and it's absolutely perfect.
Never on saxophone, I never practiced one scale or one arpeggio, nothing. All I did was I had this music in my head and I just kept on playing until my ears taught my body what to do. Now, there's a guy called Suzuki, you know who that is,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Okay.
That
He's
whole
got
method.
he's got a similar approach with the kids where it's all by ear in the beginning.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
I
Okay,
was
fair enough.
just reading about him. The parents got lessons and he's not teaching the kids how to read music in the beginning at all.
Did we talk about improvisation earlier? I can't quite remember. It's going on of half an hour or something.
We're on,
Well, what I'm getting at is what we spoke of, I think, before we started taping, but this idea of your advice to young musicians trying to figure out what this improvisation thing, and
Mm,
it's
okay.
complicated intellectually and all, even subconsciously, whatever, however that works. And you said imitate before you try to invent.
A lot of classical musicians seem to have the question about improvisation, which is because Bach were amazing improvisers, as you know. They could improvise for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, I would love to hear Mozart, in his day, just sit at the piano and improvise. And
It's
I'm
been
sure,
lost in my department of music, in classical music department, improvisation. Although it's returning, but yes, point well taken.
well, if you're a writer, or you're someone who deals in conversation, that's all improvisation, no?
Yeah.
What's the difference, really? You have a thought comes in your head, and then you get the facility to be able to communicate that thought.
Well,
And then,
there's the key you just brought up, which is the facility to communicate that thought,
yeah,
and that's why it's so stunning that you are a living example of that amazing kineticism, if that's the right word, between brain and the functional beast, the metal or the saxophone, whatever it is that allows you to speak through those instruments. So you're a genuine in that case. It's stunning.
well, I thank you for that. I've run into a lot of classical musicians that say, I can't improvise. They seem to be blocked in it. I don't know why they feel blocked, but I guess through all their training, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That page,
yeah.
etc. You know,
I just did a little tour of Cuba in June, July, and
wow,
we met young Cuban musicians, in their 20s, 30s, starting their careers, and they all could improvise. Every
wow,
single one of them. And part of their presentations always to us was free improvisation and singing, and then they'd do some classical music, and then you know what I mean? They've been trained in that whole thing. And, really, it is about training. I wish someone had taken me aside for several weeks, it would have taken, on clarinet, and just patiently showed me how to communicate from my brain to my instrument. I'm a great improvisator in the shower. It's easy.
right,
I love it.
right, right.
In fact, all of us are musicians in the shower. You
Absolutely.
Anyway, what have I missed? Because we got to bring this to an end somewhere. It goes on. Oh, let me just make sure everybody's real clear. All you have to do is look up uh, Glenn's name anywhere. Just type it in on the internet. Glenn Zottola, Z-O-T-T. I just mispronounced it again. Zottola, Zottola. Glenn, double N. Have I got it right?
Right.
Good. I got all hung up on something else there. On the internet, tons of videos, tons of music of his playing, all kinds of stuff with, as I've mentioned, all the greatest names in the world, really, of jazz and everything else. Um, Anything I've forgotten? What do you want to say before we shut her down?
Well, I mean, there's like you said, there's a lot there, and we're drawing off each other. One of the things that I try to tell people when I play, and I've been instructed to do this, and I always try to tell a story through the improvisation. In other words, a lot if you, especially in music today, you hear a lot of notes. Everybody's a virtuoso today. They can really play their instrument, and you hear all these notes. Are they actually telling a story? You know, and if you notice the great classical music, there's movements, and a great classical piece tells a story because it is communication. So one of the things that I've always tried to do is tell a story when I play.
Yeah. Narrative, narrative, narrative.
Narrative.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Glenn, what a great treat talking with you. We're done.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks
thanks.
very much.
As I say, it's such an honor.